Coming up on this episode of the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast.
And that's part of the problem. They said, well, just go out, just diet and exercise. But then if you're 400 pounds or whatever, that's not a simple thing to do. Then if you get knee problems and you need knee surgery, now that's another big problem and you can't move. So it becomes a vicious cycle. And we haven't even talked about the psychological part of it.
Welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast with Dr. William T. Choctaw, MD, JD. This podcast will inform, educate, and motivate you to live a more healthy, wealthy, and wise life. It's powered by the over 50 years of medical experience of this Yale University Medical School trained surgeon, who also received his Juris Doctorate from Western State Law School. He has executive experience as a former mayor of Walnut, California, as a chairman of the nonprofit Servants Arms, and as president of Choctaw Medical Group Incorporated. You've got questions or concerns, he's got answers for both. So let's listen in on an interview already in progress.
Yeah, very interesting. I had, listening to a podcast, I had learned that piece about that the studies were based on studying men, not women.
Yes.
So post-surgery, I could say I can only speak to my experience. I belong to a group of others who had a really rough time, lots of nausea, lots of pain, even difficult swallowing. Yeah. I even for a moment thought, these people didn't do anything to me. I was up and walking. I had no pain. I'd only had surgery one time before, and for an appendectomy, I'd been in a lot of pain. So I figured, well, they're cutting out 6 pieces of intestine, and
this is a little different from an appendectomy. Yes, sir.
So mine was going to be the same kind of pain, but I was really extraordinarily well, and I was able to manage the different phases of because initially you drink 4 ounces of liquid 3 times a day, and that's your food. And but I think it was easier for me because I was in a decided place that this is
that makes sense.
I do in some of my group. There are patients that talk about, they'll post, well, how soon after your surgery were you able to eat pizza?
Right.
How soon after your surgery, we already ate all the pizza and tacos we needed to be eating. That's not my thing is, this isn't my focus right now. I already had it. I'm good. And it's what's surprising as something that didn't happen is I always, whenever someone would say, well, I'm a vegan or a vegetarian, I say, well, I'm a vegetarian. Because I never thought that to myself that I would transition to that, but I think it's because it's easier for me to process. Beef is very difficult for me to process. It just feels so I do eat meat, but I'm more about the side dishes guy now. Interesting, and I've adapted really well. I lost 160 pounds in a year.
Wow. I
feel great. Everything, it was the reset that I was looking for, and everything changed. And I can't deny that there's a lot of privilege that came with it that I could afford to pay for it out of pocket.
Yes.
I would have had to go through that 1-year waiting process and then, see if they decide, am I a good candidate or not? And
just think about that. Just because you had the option, because you were financially secure, so you can say, you know what, I'm not going to wait 12 months, blah, 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 blah. But imagine if you didn't have that option, you were forced to wait for 12 months. You didn't want to do it, but you were forced to do it. And just imagine how that may have impacted your recovery. My point is, everybody's different. Everybody's a little different. And that's why it's very, very difficult to sort of paint a broad stroke and say all patients who get A are going to do this or B are going to do that. We're all different. God made us differently. And you were blessed not only to make the right decision, but to have a good outcome that works for you.
Yes. And I was very aware that because you read, there's even a calculation you can use about, well, if you weigh this much, you should be estimated to lose this much within the first year. And I was like, wow, that'd be great. And, I was pretty much on target. But there are so many other factors like your age,
yes,
your ethnicity, your family.
Yes.
Have other,
and indeed, a lot of the studies are now showing, I'm talking about 23, 24, that the BMI index is discriminatory. Just think about it. You see, let's say a male, 15-year-old male who's big and maybe who's overweight, and then you look at the brother and you look at the father and you look at the uncle, and pretty soon you figure out, well, maybe this is a family trait. And so my point is that a lot of times patients who are built a certain way, who look a certain way, again, has nothing to do with their lifestyle. It's part of the genetics that they're sort of faced with. Not to mention their financial status.
Yes, absolutely. And I think for me, it's been a great path, an easy one. I feel a little bit. Sometimes I do feel a little bit bad that it was so easy. Some of the people in my group, they really suffer just with the pain of
yes.
Lots of. I remember because you're in the hospital for about 2 days, and you could hear people in the next week just retching all day from the
yes.
And you don't have anything inside you, so it's just your stomach twisting in a knot and the pain of it. But I felt bad for them, but I was grateful that I didn't have that experience, and my experience has gone really well, and it's been my diet. Like I said, my diabetes remains in remission. I don't know I tested every other month. I test just to make sure I'm still processing normally.
Sure.
But I went from I was 6.7 A1C, and now I'm 5.6.
That's excellent.
My triglyceride, and that's with no medication.
Okay.
Or not even diet. It's just.
And at age 50, that's good. That's good.
My triglycerides went from 567 to 113. So I don't even think I was this healthy in my 20s.
Let me ask you a quick question. Did you ever think about the medications that are out, Ozempic, Wegovy, that sort of thing?
So when I started this, Ozempic was just coming out.
Okay.
And so I did. But then they say, so Ozempic, what is it, 5 or 10%? That you could lose, you're expected to lose weight.
I think probably at least about 5%.
At least about 5%, right? And I thought about it, and I knew I qualified because I was diabetic. So
right.
I could get, but then I thought, but I need to lose more than 5%. Losing 5% of my weight would be nice, but I need to lose vastly more than that. So I didn't give it much thought, but I think also in my mind I had taking metformin is awful. Really, I hate it. It really did help me manage my levels, but it's really an awful medication. You can't. It's like I travel for work, and I would take my medication if I was traveling because you don't know when you're going to have to go to the bathroom.
Right.
When you have to go on metformin, you have to go.
Right. Understood.
So, and it was just, I hated it so much. They do say that there's a cell rejuvenation piece that metformin helps, which was, I did notice I was looking a little bit younger in the year that I was.
Okay.
It was kind of nice. But I did the side effects of it. Were just awful to deal with, and so I didn't want to be diabetic anymore. And I managed when I was first diagnosed. I was actually doing a pretty good job of managing it. I dropped my A1C from 6.7 to 6.2.
Okay,
and which isn't too bad. But I'm so grateful that I'm in remission. I'm hopeful that it stays for a while. I don't know how long it'll be. I come from on my mother's side. There's 7 and there's 7 children, and all of them are diabetic.
Yeah.
So my chances are it'll probably come back, but
But you have a good managing system in place, and you're monitoring it regularly, which is what you should do.
Yeah.
And you just adjust. You do what you need to do with under medical supervision. And it's got to be. It must have been a tough decision. Most people don't like surgery, and so that when they choose that option,
it definitely was. But I think I would even say it was probably a place of desperation, because I allowed it to spiral so far out of control, and so I had tried to regain control by working out, and so I was so far gone, and even walking 2 miles was really painful on my knees.
So
if I wanted to jog, I wouldn't be able to.
Understood.
So
and that's part of the problem. They said, well, just go out, just diet and exercise. But then if you're 400 pounds or whatever, that's not a simple thing to do. Then if you get knee problems and you need knee surgery, now that's another big problem, and you can't move. So it becomes a vicious cycle. And we haven't even talked about the psychological part of it, the mental part of it, depression, sadness, on and on and on, antisocial behavior, those things that normally would help us, but you don't want to do that.
You absolutely begin to feel this reclusive idea of like, oh, I don't like the way I look. I'm not going to go to this event. I don't like the way I don't want people to see me. Really start limiting yourself, and absolutely, there is that psychological component, and I think it happening so well and in such a nice time frame, I think, has been a real psychological lift for me, especially turning 50, right? Because you're 50 and all this.
Right. That's a good point. Good point. What did you do psychological to help yourself? Did you have friends who helped you? Was there anything particular that you did, or did it just happen?
A lot of podcasts. So part of my weight loss is I walk. I walk 10 miles a day.
Okay.
So 5 miles in the morning and 5 miles in the evening.
Okay.
90 minutes. And in that time, sometimes I get lost in my brain and thinking about work things, but mostly it's listening to podcasts, and usually they're health related about, the experience, and my age, because really health for a man of an age in his 50, management is vastly different from man in his 30s.
You bet. And health management for a man in the 50s is vastly different from health management of a woman in her 50s. We men, and I'm generalizing now, but we tend to not want to go see the doctor. We tend to not want to do all that other stuff that we should do.
Absolutely.
And so then add in that, particularly for some men of color, then we have all these issues about, there's not a lot of trust in the healthcare delivery system. And we saw this a lot, certainly with COVID and that sort of thing. People didn't want to do vaccines and everything. So there are a lot of things that work against us getting to the point of good health and health stability.
And even the piece of managing your care with when you first start and the doctor says, okay, come back and see me in a month. If you don't have a flexible job, that means I take 3 to 4 hours off of work. And I have this fear that my job's going to say, why are you taking so much sick time off? All of a sudden you're a bad person because you're missing.
Yes.
So there's that piece. And especially the male mentality is my job is important, right?
Right.
Everything else comes second. I was fortunate that I'm the HR director, so I gotta ask anyone for it.
When you HR directors have a hard job anyway, because most people give HR directors a hard time.
Oh, yes, most definitely. But with our staff, I really said, sick time is your sick time. Take it. with the law in California even prevents you from asking them and questioning their right to take it. And I think, in our organization, we even allow, you can use sick time as a mental health day if you just need, there may not be, you just need some time.
Right.
It as a vacation, you can use it, your sick time, 3 days, up to 3 days.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast with Dr. William T. Choctaw, MD, JD. We hope you now feel more equipped with tools and actionable information that will help you live a more healthy, which includes the mental, physical, and spiritual, wealthy, which includes the financial, health, and spiritual, and wise, which includes the practical, theoretical, and emotional life. For this one and past podcast episodes, blogs, books, and news you can use, go to www.thwwp.com. That's www.thwwp.com. And you've got it. In the meantime, remember, you too can be the change you want to see in the world. You've been listening to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast with Dr. William T. Choctaw, MD, JD.